Hello Marauders and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a what I read in 2019 video. I know it's really late, but again, I've had no time to film or do anything so fun. I'm using the last little sunlight that I have coming in through my room because it looks really nice and natural, not the gross artificial light that I have going on in here. But to start off, I would like to make a disclaimer that if you don't see me holding up the book, I will put it up here in the corner somewhere because it was read on my Kindle. It looks like this. It looks like a textbook from Harry Potter. I'm very excited. I love it to death. It is beautiful. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first book I read of 2019 was Library of Souls by Ransom Riggs. I actually think I read it in 2018, maybe like the very end. Hold on. Yeah, like I read it once and then I was like, I'll read it again just because I can. Ransom Riggs is one of my favorite authors, so of course it was really nice to read it. Excuse my cat if you hear her in the bottom corner. She's wearing a cone because she's currently injured. But yeah, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Yeah, I was like trying to remember. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Obviously, Ransom Riggs is phenomenal, and I love reading anything he has going. The next book I read was actually on my Kindle. It is Son of the Dawn by Cassandra Clare, which is the first book in the Ghost of the Shadow Market series. Gave it 5 out of 5 for all the Cassandra Clare books in this list. It'll be a 5 out of 5 just because I easily love all of her work and nothing can be wrong with it. The next book I read was Every Exquisite Thing, also by Cassandra Clare, and of course 5 out of 5 because it was phenomenal and I loved all of it. The next book I read is Cast Long Shadows, also by Cassandra Clare. 5 out of 5 stars. I don't know if I have to keep reiterating that it's 5 out of 5 stars every time I say it, but it's 5 out of 5 stars. The next one I read is Learn About Loss, which is also by Cassandra Clare. These are all the novellas in her Ghost of the Shadow Market series, so they are very small and easy to read. So within like the first month, I'd already read like 9 books, so I was moving good on my Goodreads goal of 15 books, so doing pretty good on that. The next book is A Deeper Love, also by Cassandra Clare. Through Blood, Through Fire is also the next book that I read by her as well. The Land I Lost is also the next book that I read by her as well. And the last book I read by her is actually at the very end of one of her other books. I just don't remember quite which book it is. It's a long conversation. It's the one where Jace and Clary are talking in the greenhouse. Had already read it before, but the fact that she released it as a small novella by itself, I was like, yes, have to have it anyway. Just because the art is also by Cassandra Green, so it made it even better. Then starting with actual books that I physically read instead on my Kindle, the next book I read was The Queens of Fenburn by Kendra Blake, and it's a very small little novella. I am not the biggest fan of Kendra Blake. Please hurt me if you don't like my opinion. I just don't. I'm not a big fan of her. So I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars just because I'm not fully invested in her world yet. I'm planning on reading the other books to this eventually at some point. The next book I read was on my Kindle. It is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, and I was very excited for this book. I had heard so many good things. Obviously, it's been out for a very long time, and either you like it or you don't like it. There is really kind of no in-between as far as I've seen. I was intrigued by it, and I liked it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was okay, not what I was looking for. A lot of world building. I like her other stuff. But just wasn't a big fan of Throne of Glass, which is okay because sometimes you're just not a fan of other books. The next one I read was Grim Lovelies by Megan Shepherd. I actually fell in love with this series. I am so excited. I just got the newest book, and I cannot wait to read it. I am so excited because this book definitely captivated me from like the first chapter that I read of it. It was awesome and I loved it to death. So can't wait to see what happens next. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Renegades by Marissa Meyer, and I was really excited to read this one because I'd heard so many great reviews, and I am a sucker for superhero stories, so I was very excited when I picked this up and read it. I have not read the rest of the books in the series yet, but I plan on getting there. I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars, and I cannot wait to read the rest of them. The next book I read was A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro, and I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars just because I am a sucker for anything Sherlock Holmes related. I really like the fact that it follows the descendants of Sherlock and Watson, so that was really cool to see. But yeah, it was awesome and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and I loved it so much. I devoured it in like a week. It was phenomenal. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, but I am so trash for The Cruel Prince, and I have not read Queen of Nothing yet, but oh my goodness, I am excited for it. And of course, immediately after that, I picked up The Wicked King, and it's gorgeous hardcover edition, and I love it so much. It was very good. Oh look, my cat's making a cameo. What are you doing? She doesn't know. The next book I read was on my Kindle. It was The Red Squirrels of Magic by Cassandra Clare. I read this book while I was on the plane to New York. I was very excited. Sucker for everything Cassandra Clare, so it was a really good book to read, and I enjoyed it a lot. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was very, very good, and I liked it. The next book I read is A Gans But Better by Christine Riccio, and I was so excited to pick up this book just because I love her as a booktuber in general, and it was very nice to see one of the booktube community make a book, and it was phenomenal, and I loved it, and I cannot wait to read what she picks up next. The next book I read was a book that I got in a subscription box, and it is called Wicked Saints, and I love this cover detailing. It is beautiful. But I was kind of iffy about this at the very beginning because I didn't really like the whole synopsis that the book came off with, but I ended up really enjoying it, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was also in a subscription box, and it has sprayed edges, and it's beautiful, and it is Circle of Shadows by Evelyn Skye, and this one I was very iffy about because I'm not the biggest fan of ninja stories at all, but I read it, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars just because I wasn't really full out sold on it to give it a 5 out of 5, but it was very good, and I enjoyed it. The next book I read was A Darker Shade of Magic on my Kindle, and I fell in love with this series. I had heard so many things about it, and I was very iffy about it, and V.E. Schwab is supposed to be like phenomenal world building, writing. I just did not how I felt about it, so I hadn't picked it up yet, and I did, and I am so happy that I did, and I just really can't wait to read the next book in that series because I haven't finished going towards that series. I kind of stopped so I could read all the other books that I had on my TBR, but I plan on picking those ones up at least once, like one of them this year, or maybe more. I'm not quite sure. The next book I read was They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, and of course I was extremely, like, it's hard to go into that book and not already know what's going to happen because he kind of gives it away in the title, but it was very heart-wrenching and it made me very upset, and I definitely cried, and my mom had to come ask me what was wrong because I was reading outside and I started crying. But I definitely for sure gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was actually also, again, on a lot of these books were on my Kindle because then I don't have to go worry about buying them and spending money that I don't have, so it's cheaper in the Kindle to buy them. So I read the Harry Potter, A History Through a Journey Through a History of Magic. I have it down here so I know what it is. Because I have a black and white Kindle, you don't get the full effect of the colorful pictures and the way that they move because my Kindle is like a super old generation at this point, so you don't really get the full detail of how it all moves. So it wasn't nearly as interesting to read, but because I'm a big Harry Potter fan, it was fun to go through it and read it and be like, oh yeah, that's where this came from. It's so cool. But I did give it a 4 out of 5 stars just because I didn't get that full effect of that story. The next book I read was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Cassie McQuiston, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars because I went through that so fast, and it was phenomenal, and I loved it, and I cannot wait to read whatever she comes out with next. It was so good. The other book I read was The Lost Sisters by Holly Black, which is a novella that she wrote for the Wicked King, Cruel Prince genre, like the where it's all set. It was very good and I loved it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Cannot wait to read The Queen of Nothing. I am holding off, but I want it so bad. The next book I read again was Library of Souls by Ransom Riggs, because I am trash for Ransom Riggs and I knew that A Map of Days was coming out, so I just reread this one again. My second time through, I feel like I picked up more on other things that were happening that I didn't get the first time around. So I was very excited, and I was very proud of myself for rereading it again, because most of the time when I reread things, it's generally Harry Potter. So I liked rereading this again and going through it, which was fun. The next book I read was Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. I actually read this one in a... My cat's being very annoying. I read this one in a, like, 45-minute sitting while I was waiting for my brother at Barnes & Noble. Flipped through it really fast. I loved it. I wanted to read it, so I sat down and I read it, and it was phenomenal, and I loved it. I've always liked Rainbow Rowell books. I haven't read... there's one of them that I haven't read, but I like Carry On, which is one of my favorites, and I haven't read Wayward Son yet, but I'm very excited. And the next book I read was A Map of Days by Ransom Riggs. I'm actually currently in the middle of rereading it because Conference of the Birds just came out, and I'm very excited, and so I figured I should refresh myself on this one more time before I read Conference of Birds. I actually ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars the first time I read through it. I'm hoping that when I read through this again, I will think differently of the rating that I gave, but we'll see what happens. The next book I read is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, and I was actually very iffy about reading these in the first place because I wasn't the biggest fan of them, but I really liked Six of Crows, so I figured I would give these a try. Plus, with the Shadow and Bone series coming out on Netflix, I was very excited to see what it would say. I actually really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to keep reading the rest of the series. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Karvall by Stephanie Garber, and I actually gave it a 5 out of 5 stars because I was not anticipating liking it as much as I did, but in a subscription box I got given the chapter snippet of the last book in the series, and so I said, I might want to try this, so I picked it up and I tried it, and I absolutely fell in love with it, and I cannot wait to read the next one. And the last book that I read, not really read, I listened to the audiobook of it, was Psych by Neil Shusterman, and I absolutely fell in love with this book. I was not anticipating loving it as much as I did. I actually was listening to it when I was walking, and there was a point in the book where it just made me completely just stop in the middle of my tracks while I was walking, and I had to just stand there and process what had just happened. But yeah, that was all the books that I read in 2019. My Goodreads goal was out of 15 books, I read 31. So my goal for this year is about 20 to 25 books, just because I do have school going on and work and all these other things. So my goal is to try to get to at least 20 books, but of course I blew my other one out of the water, so we'll see if I can do that again. Whew, you know your girl is tired after all of those books, but I think that's everything. Gonna go enjoy some more chai tea. Can't wait, but until next time, Mischief Managed.